Absolutely, and you know what? Even though it is technically the off season for Alabama football, I mean, there's still a lot to talk about, especially with another home and home series being announced yesterday. But you mentioned that over/under of years that Nick Saban would be coaching at Alabama in his coaching career, for that matter. But I want to tie this in with some of the home and home series that have been announced, because I think Greg Byrne has an idea behind closed doors how long he thinks Nick Saban will remain around Tuscaloosa. So my first quarter question for you then, when it comes to Nick Saban, how long Nick Saban will be coaching here, and the home and home series that have been announced, Nick Saban will be coaching in 2026 for Alabama when they go to West Virginia. So Greg Byrne has a little homecoming trip for Nick Saban to West Virginia in mind in 7 years.
Let me ask you this: is that not the last year of his contract? Is that the year, or does his contract end in 2025? I think it's
25. I think it's 25.
So, which means that because I thought he had 7 years, which would put him 2027. But is it 6? But either way, I think that it's either one of two things, James. Either he's expecting him to be on there and maybe that farewell tour, or it's just a post. He's not coaching, but it's a way for Alabama to be up there and him to be honored in his home state. So either way, I think it's about honoring Coach Saban in terms of West Virginia, in terms of that game. So with also another team announced for the 2026 schedule, and also for 2023 and 2024, South Florida will be appearing on Alabama's football schedule in the near future, folks. So with another home and home series, this one a 2-for-1 with Alabama hosting 2 and going down to Tampa to Raymond James Stadium, the phenomenon in recent years, in fact the last decade or so, of neutral site openers will be a thing of the past for this second quarter question. Well, I think that tells me, James, that there's a change coming. I think the neutral site game is a fundamental part of the process. And so when I look out and start seeing 2026, 2027 and beyond, that's starting to get there. And if Nick Saban's going to be leaving and potentially leaving, that kind of makes you go, okay, maybe 4 or 5 years is where he's looking. Maybe 70 is his cutoff point. And after that, they start going back. Because what you don't want to do is, if you know you're getting close to your time, you don't want to lock a team in to something. You can always change your schedule, and it's a lot easier to change a schedule to a neutral site game than it is to add another home and home or series of games. So when I look at the philosophy and I start seeing these neutral site games going away from the schedule, we've never had anything but neutral site games under Nick Saban. So when you see them start to go away, James, maybe that's a sign that at some point he could retire from this point forward if he so chooses. So,
with, of course, the one exception to the rule being the Penn State series in 2010 and 2011.
Yeah, but that was already on that since he's been making the schedules. That I think that Penn State was probably already on there. It may not have been.
The interesting part of that was actually supposed to be an 04-05 series that was pushed back.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So that was probably more of already there than his philosophy and part of his process. So toss it back to you for the third quarter.
Oh, absolutely. And I wanted to save this one for you as far as this segment, because we've also heard the noise earlier in the off season as far as UCF wanting some home and homes and turning down a 2-for-1 with Florida. Alabama now accepting a 2-for-1 with South Florida. So Alabama scheduling a 2-for-1, including a trip to Tampa, is a slap in the face to UCF.
Well, UCF, they say what they wanted, and if you want to call yourself a champion, but no one is recognizing you as that, you take the opportunity to get 3 wins against a Power 5. Now, all of a sudden, James, it's not happenstance. It's not conjecture. It's actually reality. And they had an opportunity to do that in terms of UCF, and they didn't do it. I don't think Alabama, when they made that decision, was necessarily thinking about UCF. But on the other hand, it will be, if UCF 4 years from now is still having that issue of respect and trying to get there, well, they had a great opportunity to start garnering some respect. Because here's the thing. I believe even if I don't even remember what year they were looking at that 2-for-1 with Florida. If they just had that on their schedule, James, it would have made a difference.
Oh, it was the same time frame, actually.
You see what I'm saying? But if they had just put that on their schedule, think about if you're a voter, James, and UCF has been said, everybody's been saying, well, UCF is good because they're afraid to play everybody. They're afraid to play everybody. If all of a sudden you look up and they have Florida on their schedule for 3 years in a row, all of a sudden you don't have that same feeling that they're dodging people, so you give them a little bit of credit even in the years before they actually play them, because at least they're willing to look at it. And the fact that they turn that down because they think it should be 1-1, I mean, you take that. You take that opportunity to get on the big boy schedule. Remember Boise? Boise would play you wherever. And they still never got there, but at least Boise was willing to play, even if it wasn't a home and home. They were willing to come. I remember when they came over and beat Georgia in that tip-off game of the season, kickoff game of the season. I mean, they were willing to do it to try to build their program. Unfortunately, the system changed, and they got left behind once again.
Oh, by the way, folks, South Florida does also have a 2-for-1 with Florida coming up in the near future.
They did get it done? Oh,
with South Florida. With South Florida.
Well, see, now say South Florida doesn't win those games, but they're competitive and they end the season at 11-1. They may not get to the championship game, James, but they're going to get into the New Year's Day Bowl. They're going to gain respect. Then all of a sudden they fool around and they go undefeated like a UCF. All of a sudden now, if they don't play Alabama or Florida, but they've played them in the past and they've been respectful, all of a sudden people go, well, when they had their chance, man, they only lost by 1 or they lost by a touchdown. Let's give them some love. And so it's just that's the way you build your program, build your resume, build your profile. And UCF, I think, missed a great opportunity. I'll throw it to you for the fourth quarter.
So we'll put a nice little bow on this topic then as far as why you're seeing more of these type, or I guess a return, especially for Alabama, to a home-and-home format when it comes to non-conference scheduling. Greg Byrne recognizes that he needs these type of games to enhance the home schedule for season ticket holders.
Repeat that now and make sure I understand when you ask.
Because there's been a lot of issues when it comes to attendance at some of the non-conference games in Bryant-Denny Stadium in recent years. Scheduling non-conference series like South Florida, Texas, and West Virginia is a way for Greg Byrne to kind of throw a bone out and enhance the value of a season ticket package for the fans for the home games.
I think that is definitely part of it. And I'll also, James, with this fourth quarter answer, give you a little bit of what Virgil Williams thinks may be behind some of the scheduling changes. Virgil Williams says maybe they are getting away from those neutral site games to give the Bama faithful a break in travel expenses. We have overtaxed our fans with all these games that require travel with being in the playoffs every year. You know, being an Alabama fan is the most expensive fan experience in college football, James. We started off neutral site, Atlanta, went to Florida with Louisville, Texas. So, and then on top of that, you have the college football playoffs. You know, don't forget the SEC, because the number of times, the consistency of being in the SEC championship game That's another off-campus game. Then you have the semifinals, and then you have the finals. All but 1 year, Alabama has had, in the last couple of years, Alabama has played 14 to 15 games every year. Every year. And so that is a way I think that he can give some at least the close games, James. It's a better opponent, but also think that part of that could be this neutral site expense of being a Bama fan. And that's the reason I want to see the college football playoffs change. I want that semifinal game to be on campus. Man, that would be, you know how crazy it would be if say 2 years ago, Alabama, Dabo had to come to play Alabama here. Or if Ohio State the first year would have had to play Alabama here. I mean, it's just, that would be such, I mean, it wouldn't matter who the opponent was. If it's a college playoff game on campus, it's a game changer. Then you only have to plan, and then you have just like the Super Bowl. Literally, the college football championship game would probably, from a United States continental standpoint, would surpass the Super Bowl. If it was in a neutral site, because then it would be a huge buildup, and then people would be more likely to come and support it if they didn't have to make 2 back-to-back trips and choose a game.